Let's turn our monitors now to the White House, where just moments ago, President Donald Trump started his bilateral meeting with Syrian President Ahmed al-Sharaa. It's the first ever visit by a Syrian president to the White House. The two leaders previously met in May, and that meeting ended with President Trump lifting decades of sanctions against Syria. CBS News White House reporter Olivia Rinaldi joins me now for much more on this. Good to see you today, Olivia. Do we know what the two leaders will be discussing today when they meet?
Hugo, it's a great question. We know this bilateral meeting is underway. I do want to note, before we get to what they could be discussing, I want to talk about the arrival of the new Syrian leader, Ahmed al-Sharaa, because normally when we have arrivals of leaders, you see it on the screen behind me, and you'll see it on the screen, but it's lined with flags. It's a big ornate arrival. That's not what happened with this leader. He came in a motorcade and entered the White House away from the cameras from which we could see, and there are no press in that meeting with the president and the new Syrian leader. So quite telling about perhaps the relationship between the two, because this does mark a major policy shift between the U.S. and Syria. Just to give you a scope of it, back in December, just less than a year ago, this leader, Ahmed al-Sharaa, had a $10 million bounty on his head by the U.S., and now he's in the Oval Office meeting with the president. This is, of course, after he overthrew the Assad regime, which was in place in Syria. And now the discussion that will likely happen today is twofold. One, about rebuilding Syria after 14 years of a devastating civil war that they had. One estimate said it would be about $216 billion to rebuild Syria, of which the U.S. has a vested interest in because they were critical in defeating ISIS. Now, that's the second part of this conversation that is likely to happen in the Oval Office, because there's discussion about whether Syria will enter the global coalition to defeat ISIS, if they're going to enter that formally. So certainly a lot of conversation happening about that today. We have asked the White House for a readout when that comes, some pictures perhaps of the two of them meeting, but certainly a notable shift for Ahmed al-Sharaa, who was once sanctioned by the U.S. For being in a terrorist organization and is now here at the White House meeting with President Trump right now.
Yeah, a totally big change there for him. I want to ask you about this, because even as we talk about this meeting with President Trump, we know the president pardoned 77 people who were allegedly involved in trying to overturn the 2020 election. So what do we know about those pardons, and also of some of the people included in that list? We see them on the screen here.
Yeah, some of the people who are in that list include Rudy Giuliani, John Eastman, Mark Meadows, who was the former chief of staff to the White House, Sidney Powell, who's a former lawyer for President Trump, as well as Jenna Ellis as well. All of them part of the effort in 2020 to overturn the results of that election, which the president did lose. But this is part of an effort to pardon them. What's quite notable about this is that these pardons are largely symbolic. None of these individuals were charged with a federal crime as it relates to the 2020 election. They were charged by states, and the president does not have the jurisdiction to overturn or to pardon them for state charges. So this is largely symbolic. We did learn that these pardons were signed on Friday. They were announced yesterday, late last night, by the DOJ's pardon attorney, Ed Martin. So quite notable there, but certainly part of an effort for the president and his allies in giving them, this pardon, wink and a nod from the 2020 election with signing these pardons.
All right. Olivia Rinaldi at the White House for us today. Thank you so much.